Welcome to the show, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Yesterday, I talked about the three components that are critical to the real estate business. It's buy, wait, sell. It's literally no more difficult than that. Buy, wait, and sell. That's it. It's not that hard. So today, I want to talk about one of the reasons why we fail so poorly at doing that. People do things, Rob is fond of saying this, people do things for one of two reasons: love or fear. Love or fear. That's it. And today, I'm going to talk just about the fear component for an entire hour. And I can just about guarantee you that nobody's going to explain it the way that I do it. It's not the fear of losing money or the fear of looking silly in front of your business friends, colleagues, or spouse if you have a real estate deal that goes south. It's not fear of the unknown. I'm scared. What if I screw it up? It's not any of those fears. There's really only one fear when you really distill it all down. There's one fear, and it guides everything in your life. There's one fear, just one. It's not any of the it's not, I don't have enough education. I need 6 mentors to tell me if this is a good deal. It's not any of that. I've got to figure out exactly how a title company works and how to read a title commitment before I close my first deal. It's not what happens if my hard money loan gets rejected. Like those are all symptoms of what the underlying problem is. I can tell you this for a fact. We've known for years now, decades, that humans actually fear success, which is fascinating. Especially in this modern era, a lot of folks fear success because then they won't have any excuses. You know, I noticed years ago when hanging out with a couple of my old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. And I was at this party, and the topic of work came up. And they started, doing a little work drama, sharing that, little just rumors, the water cooler talk. And then this discussion came up about bosses and that sort of thing. And I'm just sitting there listening to it. I'm like, I can't even listen to this anymore. I've got no excuses. I am the boss. I run my own company. I can't, it's funny. When you begin to run your own enterprise, you really have no excuses to complain. And what's fascinating is how much time at work or in discussions about work is really just idle complaining. I'll tell you one of the greatest things, and it's something virtually no one talks about. One of the greatest things about running your own company is the fact that you choose who you work with. If we don't like working with an investor or a real estate agent or a wholesaler, we just fire them from our business. We just choose not to work with those people. It's real simple. We just go, nope, we're not working with you. What do you mean you're not working with me? Well, we don't like how you act. We don't like how you treat our people. It's that simple. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how much money you're going to make us. It is not worth our time to deal with you as a stressor in our business life. So we just don't do it. You're going to have different stress as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, than you would if you were an employee. But I'll tell you, a lot of those things you get to pick. Like, man, this guy is really awful to work with. Then fire him. It's that simple. So one of the fascinating things is Humans innately fear success because then they have no excuses. And when you have no excuses, what does that mean? That means you are 100% responsible for your actions and their outcomes in your business. Granted, not all of it is in your span of control. You've got to accept those things that are not in your span of control, but you have to take responsibility for the things that are. And fear is one of those things. And there's a lot of discussion of fear. I could see it in people's faces. I could still see it now. I had an hour-long conversation with a buddy of mine. He's a big real estate investor here in town. We were chatting yesterday before I got on the bike in the afternoon. And we were talking about the next market crash and what he thinks is going to happen. He's been in real estate a little bit longer than I have, about 6-7 years longer than I have. I did a webinar Monday before last on what happened in 2020 and my market predictions for 2021. And he was on there. And he said, you know what? I think you're right. He said, I think it might be time to really start ramping up the buying again. As he said, look, man, I think COVID was, if the other shoe was going to drop in real estate, it would have happened in COVID. In fact, it's still, technically, have things really changed that much since March last year? Guys, we've been in some form of lockdown, even in Texas, for over a year. Now, traffic is coming back. Now, Texas is a little bit different than the rest of the United States. I'm going to be in Vegas this weekend. I'm going shopping for a condo. And I've got like 5 towers I'm going to, like a couple of dozen properties. It's going to be a good time. I've already found one I really like. But it's not like, Texas is not like Vegas. Like I've already chatted with a couple of folks. Hey, what's the story on Vegas? Are the clubs open? Are the pool parties open yet? Like what's going on in Vegas? And they were like, no, man, it's still kind of shut down. I'm also shopping for a house in San Diego on Coronado Island. Those prices, I can tell, really haven't been affected by the slowdowns, by the closures. However, I can tell Vegas is already, that market's starting to soften a little bit. Now, it's not going to be like 2008 where they lost 60% of value overnight, but there's definitely some softening in that marketplace because the city is still shut down. So when you look at the amount of GDP that's been reorganized or just shuttered, you still go to restaurants. There's nobody in the restaurant. It's wild. Some restaurants have a lot of folks in them, but still, they're enforcing that 50% rule. It's bananas. So you'd think the crash would have already happened. There hasn't been. In fact, if anything has come out of this, we've realized that single-family real estate is the most important asset class on the planet. Quite opposite of all those other big commercial assets. It's been very interesting to watch. It really has. I got an email last week from Airstream. Airstream is a travel trailer company. So they make those aluminum travel trailers. Looks like a big beer can on wheels. Airstream came out with a new model that has a home office in their travel trailer. So that tells me if a company like that sells, I think their cheapest travel trailer is like $50,000. Most expensive is almost $200,000. The world's changing. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk more about fear and what you are really fearful of. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Welcome back, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Today we're talking about fear and what the real definition of fear is. We're afraid of all kinds of stuff, the unknown. Oh my gosh, the election. Everybody has so much heartburn over the election. Did it really matter? That's what's funny is like, did any of this stuff really matter at the end of the day? I was chatting with my dad last week. I went on the phone for like 2 hours. And then I was chatting with Brian yesterday. Brian and I went to lunch. We had kind of a similar conversation. And what was the conversation about? Conversation was about, hey, what do you think happens next? I had that same conversation with this buddy of mine last night. What do you think happens next? And I said, well, there's one thing the United States is doing a really great job of is printing more money. And we know where that inflation shows up. It shows up in real estate, higher education, healthcare, and automobiles. So Brian asked a really smart question. He said, hey, when does this meal here at Papacitos cost us, $4,000? I said, I don't know, but I do know you as a father of a brand new kiddo at home, you are not worried about what most parents are worried about when they have a kid. And he said, what do you mean? I said, most parents are worried about how am I going to pay for college? And he's like, yeah, I'm not worried about any of that. Exactly. Because you've got assets that are inflation adjusted. If real estate jumps 20%, you just made an extra 20% on your money. Who cares? And he was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go into college anyway. That was a whole nother discussion. But why do guys like me and Brian, guys I chatted with last night, not fear any of this stuff? I'll tell you one, I had this revelation come in the office this morning. I was watching Billions, I don't remember what that was, Sunday night. And the scene comes on, and there's this gal, she's COO for one of the hedge funds. And just an absolute awful person to work for. And I said, boy, one of my greatest fears is I've ever have to work with somebody like that. Oh, it'd be awful. It'd be terrible. And the folks I were with were like, you're never going to work with somebody, you're never going to work for somebody the rest of your life. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, that's true. But then I thought, well, why is that true? And I had that kind of conversation in my mind this morning. The most important thing when you're building wealth is not the actual wealth. It's the person you become. I'm not worried about a real estate crash because I know we can work through it. We will lose a bunch of money. Our investors will not. I really wasn't that worried when they shut down the country for coronavirus. I'm like, look, this thing won't last more than 2 years. It'll be 18 months. In fact, we started a whole blog where you can read all of our predictions that happened in real time during the coronavirus. In fact, one of the sad things is our mortality number was right. We made that prediction in March. We haven't talked about it publicly on the radio, but unfortunately our modeling was absolutely right. Very similar modeling we use for real estate. Nobody else could get the number right. We figured it out. But the reality is that you're scared of something. Everybody's scared of something, but that something is the same thing. What happens if the market crashes? Everyone freaks out. Oh my gosh, what happens if the market crashes? Well, don't you know how to build a portfolio by now? Don't you know how to be successful even though you've not been in a real estate market crash? Go back to the panel I was on with Noble Mortgage nearly a month ago. Steve brought up a great point. He said most investors have never been through a real estate crash. And I said, Steve, you're right. But for one little critical detail you missed. Real estate crashes every 20 years. Most real estate people will go through one, maybe two in their entire career. And every crash is different. So just because you've been through, this is classic. If Rob were here, because he was a history major in college. Every country prepares for the next war based off what they learned from the last war. But the next war is never like the war they just got out of. It's absolutely not the same. But it's the same fear. And all of those fears can be distilled down to one thing: scarcity. when people start talking about real estate crash, I immediately equate that to fear. Real estate crash equals fear. When someone says, Jason, a crash is coming, you might as well walk up to me and say, Jason, I'm really scared. Because that's really what you're communicating. I'm worried about a crash. When someone walks up to me and tells me they're worried about a negative future event, what they really want to say is, I'm really scared. About what? Uncertainty. And what is that uncertainty? I'm scared that the resources in the future are going to be so scarce and my skills are not commensurate with abundance. That's really what that means. I will not be able to muster the resources and apply my skills to be as successful in the future as I have in the past. It's a complete lack of self-confidence. I was sharing with somebody a couple of weeks ago, the average entrepreneur files for bankruptcy 3.5 times during their career. The average entrepreneur files for bankruptcy 3.5 times in their career. And they said, well, you don't ever want to file for bankruptcy. I'm like, of course not. But here's what I do know. Every time something bad has happened in my life, I just get that much better. And by the time I come out of it, not only am I better, I'm further than I was before. So when I hear people get scared about a real estate crash, what they're really saying is, I'm scared and I'm not sure I've got the resources and the skill set to build it all back or to get through it and grow. Your entire fear, everything in your life has everything to do with scarcity. It's like the worst fear of missing out. It's like the worst level of FOMO. Jason, there's a real estate crash coming. Why? Well, prices are going up. Okay, who cares? Well, you don't understand there's a crash coming. No, I hear you. I can hear you just fine. However, if I'm listening, I can hear when you say there's a crash coming. But when I'm listening, what you're really telling me is, I'm scared. That's really what you're telling me. And what's that fear? That fear is 100% scarcity. I'm scared I'm not going to be able to find the money or find the deals or be able to generate enough cash flow to make it. I'm scared. And there's no reason to be. There's plenty of deals out there. When we get back from a break, I'm going to talk more about fear and scarcity as Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. We're talking about fear and scarcity right now. Most are scared, and I really do believe this. You're worried about a crash. But here's the fascinating thing. We went through a little mini crash back in March last year. Most people missed it. They were too busy, I don't know, doing whatever people do. I hear this all the time. Jason, I'm not going to invest until there's a real estate crash. That's what they say. When I listen, when I really listen, this is what they mean. Jason, I don't have the skills or resources to compete in this marketplace. That's really what you're telling me. What you're telling me is I'm inadequate in this marketplace. I hope that really hurts. It should, because it's true. I can't find any flipping deals because there's no deals out there. No, you can't find deals because your skill sets are not high enough. and you have a belief there are no deals out there. I'm going to get on a plane Friday. I'll be in Vegas for the weekend. All day Saturday, I'm going to be looking at property. Probably all night. Literally like 6 different condo towers. Like, I'm looking at everything from $1 million all the way down to about $200,000. I'm going to see the full gamut of properties I've got available. And I already know what the agents are going to say. Well, maybe we can get a little discount here. There's not been as many deals as we thought there would. I'm like, That's all garbage in the ear, and garbage goes right out the other ear. I can't tell you how many times in my entire life somebody said something like that. And I'm like, well, just watch. Just because you believe it to be true doesn't make it so. I could spend a week on this show talking about that. Just because you believe it to be true doesn't make it true. There's a lot of this happy hoo-ha nonsense that's been peddled on YouTube and hotel room stages for decades now about positive mindset and all that other stuff. And don't get me wrong, some of it's true and some of it's really good. But a lot of it feeds on that scarcity mindset. Now, how do you fix fear? How do you fix this idea of scarcity? It's real simple. You start doing. There's a lot of research that has been done about how humans react in crisis, in high-stress situations, whether it's combat, natural disasters, house fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, all that stuff. What most humans do when something gets fight or flight, like gets really intense and real scary, is they stop moving. They go to inaction and just shut down and freeze. And when you're in a state of fear, you have to do the exact opposite. And what's that fear state? It's scarcity. When you believe there are no deals out there, you don't stop looking for deals. You go out and rustle up some more business. How do you do it? More marketing, more sales. One of my favorite, when I was competing, it was a mountain bike. I used to race mountain bikes from middle school all the way through my sophomore year in college. I did it here in the United States and in Europe. And one of my favorite times of year, although it was absolutely miserable, my favorite times of year to train was in Germany during the winter. Now, there are a significant number of these small German towns that have these cobblestone roads. And these cobblestones it's like a black rock. And it's real slick when it's wet. And it's rough to ride on. But it was one of the greatest training exercises ever. You go out there and polish off 20, 30, 40 miles when it's 26 degrees outside and raining. Here's what I know. My competition's not doing that. Because when the season starts, you'll hear this. Oh man, if the weather were just better. I couldn't train as much because the winter was really rough. I'd be better if I was able to train another, couple more weeks if the weather was just better. No, the weather was fine. The weather was German winter, 26 degrees and rainy. You just put on more clothes, buddy. The training was great. When I was out there, I knew I was the only one or a few that were out there training in that nonsense. And don't get me wrong, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. But I know to get ahead of my competition, the only way to do it is to train when everybody else is sitting at home. So those folks sitting at home, why aren't they out there training? They're scared. It's too cold. I might get hurt. What happens if? And it's all scarcity related. That's all it is. And I see it in real estate all the time. Jason, there's no deals out there. There's no money. There's no this. There's no that. Yeah, if you go in with that mindset that there's nothing out there for you, then there never will be. It's that simple. You're scared. Jason, there's a real estate crash coming. Are you sure? No, I'm convinced there's a real estate crash coming. Well, if that's true, then why don't you sell your entire portfolio? That's how I know it's BS. When someone says to me, Jason, there's a real estate crash coming, the first thing I'm asking is, oh, did you put your personal house on the market? Well, what do you mean? Well, if there's a real estate crash coming, why don't you sell your personal residence, move into an apartment or a rental, wait for the crash, and then buy it back for half the price? Oh, I mean, we really like the house. Well, I'm like, well, wait a minute. You could buy the exact same house back at 50% off. Or you could upgrade, buy a bigger house, a nicer house for the same price. That's how I know it's all garbage. These gurus that get on stage and talk about, well, you need to invest, there's a crash coming and you got to sign up for my course because if you don't, you're not going to be able to navigate the crash. I always ask them, hey man, have you sold your personal house yet? Have you gone to cash? Is everything in cash? Because when the crash is coming, that cash is king. It really is. Lenders fold up shop. All of them do. We had hedge funds we were working with that wouldn't even answer our phone calls when Corona hit. Of course, now they're taking our calls because they want to loan us money. Surprise, surprise, they came back. So whenever you hear this real estate crash, just think, I'm scared, because that's exactly what it is. We get back from the break. I'm going to wrap all this stuff up. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Welcome back, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. We're talking about fear today, and it's all based off the scarcity mentality. Jason, there's no deals out there. There's no money. I can't find contractors. It's like all the typical whining that you hear from real estate investors. Or conversely, there's a crash. There's a crash coming. Jason, you got to look at the numbers. I'm like, what numbers are you looking at? There's a crash coming because prices are going up. And yeah, prices are going up because inventory is down 30% and sales are up 40%. What do you think is going to happen to prices? This is a continuation of the show I did yesterday where I was sitting in my truck driving back to the house after I left the gym, and I'm like, why are more investors not successful? When someone says I've been doing this 20 years, I look at them, I'm like, what color plane are you flying to your condo in Miami this weekend? Oh, I don't have a plane. And I don't have a condo in Miami. I'm like, well, what about your ranch? I mean, you got like a 1,000-acre ranch or something? No, I don't have one of those either. What do you, I mean, you've been doing this 20 years. What do you have? Like, is your portfolio like huge? Can you see your portfolio from space? Because I can tell you this right now. If I've been doing this 20 years, I want to be able to see that portfolio from space. Oh no, I got, I do a little flipping, do a little wholesaling, do a little owner finance, I do a little this, a little that. When I was with Tom over at Right Path, we used to call that the schizophrenic real estate investor. They're focused on nothing. They own all kinds of just random, to be quite honest with you, just random crap. And they call that a portfolio. And I'm like, it's a mess. And it doesn't have any real value. But you switched from different types of investing because of scarcity. Well, Jason, you don't understand. Back in the day, there weren't as many flips as you could get. Oh, really? Well, then I went from flipping and then I went into wholesaling because, I could generate cash and then I could go do this. And you're just like, what are you talking about? You're telling me there was nobody that was a landlord that was buy and hold deals. I hear this one all the time. Jason, I've only got like $40,000 and I want to buy, 20 rental properties, and that's just not enough. So I need to do flipping and wholesaling. I'm like, why do you have to do flipping and wholesaling? Well, I just don't have enough money. I'm like, well, find some other money. Like, we use fear, and really when I talk about fear, it's scarcity. We use this idea of scarce resources as an excuse to change our behavior. And what happens is when you change your behavior, your goalposts that are surrounding your goal changes. I'm a firm believer that you can't get good at something unless you spend a lot of time on it. That's just the reality of this world. Why is that? I can give somebody a winning lottery ticket. They will be broke in 5 years. I can give you all the trappings of wealth. I can give you the Lambo. You got the Range Rover. You got the house in River Oaks or West U or Spring Branch or the Heights. Palatial estate. You can get the Rolex. You can get the custom suits. You can look like you're really successful. But life will dress you down long term. It really will, because those trappings of wealth, the winning lottery ticket, is not real. You will eventually be broke. Why? Because you don't have the skill sets yet. Wealth is a consequence in building skills. Income is a consequence of building skills. That's why going to another seminar doesn't work. You go to that seminar, you look around the room, there's 600 people in the room, and maybe 10 of them will make it. Why? Because everyone else is building their businesses, and their life is built on the scarcity mentality. Well, if I don't get in right now and start buying right now, then, I don't know if I want to buy right now because the prices are so high and there's this and there's that. The key component to take away from yesterday's message is wait. Buy, wait, sell. That's the 3 components to real estate. The problem is that scarcity mindset starts to enter our mind during the wait process. In fact, it shows up in all 3. Well, Jason, I just, I feel like I got to sell this property right now. If I don't sell it right now, I'm not going to be able to take the money and go buy something else. Well, do you have anything else picked out? Like, did you find another really great deal? No. But if I don't, then the deal won't be. Well, hold on. Let's calm down. Do we have to use the money from that deal? Can we find the money somewhere else? The waiting is where wealth is built. It's one of the things that I know I personally have had the most challenge with is patience. You've got to be a little patient. One of the ways I describe this whenever I'm giving advice to somebody is you got to let the play develop. Like the best players in the NFL, you can watch them, especially running back. I like watching the running backs. They get behind the line, especially the guys that really watch the play develop. Oh, there was supposed to be a hole over here on my right side, but the defense did this, and it looks like I'm going to have to go up the middle or come around to the left, or I'm going to have to swing all the way around and run down the sideline. The best players sit there and wait and watch. You got to watch a little bit. You got to sit back and, okay, but it's not watch with inaction. It's not watch and be scared. You're watching to run the play. Because here's the other thing that athletes know. If you stand still, you're going to lose. You can't stand still in sports. One of the toughest athletic events in the world is the Tour de France, bar none. It's like the Super Bowl for a month. There's no timeouts. Guys have finished stages with broken legs just so it wasn't broken enough where maybe they could ride the next day and at least finish. It's a month long. It is brutal. think the only thing tougher is the Barkley Marathon. And I think maybe a dozen guys have finished the Barkley Marathon in like 30 years. I mean, special forces guys wash out of that like you wouldn't believe. It is ridiculously tough. I wouldn't even call it a race or a competitive event because you just have to be so out of your mind to finish the Barkley. Like, it's just so beyond human comprehension, right? And like, I kid you not, I think it's a dozen guys that finished it in 30 years. Invitation only, it's ridiculous. Probably the second worst events at Tour de France. It's a brutal pursuit. But here's what I'll tell you. You crash on that bike, you break a leg, you can't stop. You got to keep going. It's the same in basketball, football, baseball. There's no sitting and waiting. If you're waiting, you're looking for the play to develop. But you're prone to action. And what fixes that fear and that scarcity mindset is getting in the game, making some decisions, making offers, accepting offers, walking properties, talking to lenders, getting your crew together to start construction. Action is what fixes the scarcity mindset. But don't sit there and freeze, because when you do, you're just going to get run over. Thanks for listening. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network.